Please give a warm welcome to the stage, Natasha Pearl Hansen.
When my wedding was called off 3 weeks before the big day, I did what any reasonable person would do. I filmed a comedy special at the venue on what would have been my wedding day with all my invited guests in attendance. What can I say? It was a smart move. Everybody already had saved the dates, so when I sent that ticket link out, I knew everyone was available. No excuses not to come. Plus, tickets were cheaper than a wedding gift, so win-win. I mean, if my life was gonna blow up publicly, might as well sell tickets to the show. What I learned from that experience is while most of life doesn't feel funny while it's happening, finding ways to laugh about it isn't dismissive. It's informing the rest of your story. Humor isn't just a release, it's a lifeline. It doesn't erase pain, but it can repurpose it. That small shift in perspective creates a bridge back to connection when all we want to do is isolate. Here's me having the time of my life on what should have been the worst day of my life, and it actually turned out pretty awesome. As a comedian who spent well over a decade turning my personal heartbreaks and catastrophes into entertainment, performed on stages all over the world, and created a comedy special on one of the more notably rough days of my life, what surprised me most wasn't choosing to laugh through the hard times. It was what happened afterwards. People started approaching me, sharing their own stories of their life imploding, which on the internet can get way too personal sometimes. And everyone was just looking for a way to ease the pain of their struggles. My advice was often the same: watch some comedy. Today I will explore how finding moments of humor in our darkest times isn't just about temporary relief. It's about creating pathways back to human connection when we need it most. Laughter is essential for healing. My grandma and I are very close. I talk about her on stage a lot. My family and I often joke that it's the only thing keeping her alive. It's like believing in the tooth fairy, just one who actually needs teeth. She's old. Our elders have witnessed and experienced so much by an older age that we give them a long leash with their opinions and their sense of humor. They can say whatever they want at that point. They've earned it. I see some nods going around the room, some uncomfortable holiday memories going through your minds. My grandma often jokes about being ready to go home and see Jesus. I'm like, Grandma, stop saying things like that. Grandma has made a lot of colorful commentary over the years that's made a splash on the internet. Recently, she went to the doctor, and I called to check on her after, and she picks up and she goes, "Well, Natasha, unfortunately, I'm very healthy." That's my grandma disappointed by good news. I could always appreciate her reliance on humor. Have you ever had a day so bad, everything's going wrong, you almost can't even believe it, and you just sit in your car at the end of that day, and you laugh hysterically? Not because it's funny, but because your body's almost like, well, crying isn't gonna fix anything, let's give this a try. I witnessed that with my grandma years ago. She had just lost my grandpa, the love of her life. And after weeks of us handling the logistical things and moving everything they owned out of their home together for over 30 years, we're sitting on a bench in Walmart because nothing says processing grief like fluorescent lighting and the smell of tires. And she buries her head in her hands and she starts sobbing. And I go, "Grandma, I'm so sorry." And I go to hug her, and she waves me off. And I realize she's laughing. She starts telling me this memory about Grandpa, that he was so poor growing up a black kid in the South, that all he got every Christmas was a brown paper bag with a pair of socks and an orange inside. And through the cry laughing, she goes, "I always wondered why he left his dirty dress socks inside of his shoes to wear again all week. It drove me nuts. It's because he only got one pair of socks a year. And an orange for some reason." Now, of course, she wasn't laughing at my grandpa's situation as a kid or hers right now, but something about this memory captivated me. In the midst of the worst time in her life, And she'd been through some horrible things, lost a house in a fire, abusive relationships, her father and her brother committing suicide. This memory was something her brain decided to pull up in the middle of this trauma to provide an outlet. Humor is pattern interruption. Your brain expects one thing, gets another, boom, you laugh, right? Sometimes you laugh because you're uncomfortable. Your nervous system throws up its hands and goes, "Oh, fine, we're laughing now." By leaning on humor, you create space for something new. It doesn't deny pain, it gives us freedom to become unstuck from it. After filming my comedy special, I thought, well, that was therapeutic, now what? So I once again did what any reasonable person would do after turning their unwedding into content. I started a business about it. I launched a community platform to help people through breakups and divorce because apparently when your life explodes publicly, people assume you're qualified to help with theirs. Honestly, they're not wrong. What started as, hey, let's help people through breakups, quickly snowballed into something much bigger. Turns out people's lives can fall apart in all sorts of ways. Who knew? I realized we weren't just dealing with breakups. I realized we were dealing with the universal human experience of having your plans completely demolished and having to figure out what the hell comes next. Soon people started reaching out about job loss, health scares, family estrangement, sudden death of loved ones. Basically, every life likes to sucker punch you when you're not looking. Welcome to being human. A lot messier than the brochure promised. I started interviewing people in my community, and I kept asking this one question out of pure curiosity. When do you think you felt normal again? Not when did you get over it, or when did you heal, but when did you feel normal? One man had recently lost his wife suddenly to a rare cancer. He said for weeks after the funeral, people kept showing up with casseroles and condolences and all these grand gestures designed to make him feel better, but he somehow felt more alone and bloated. Too many tater tots. We gotta stop doing that to people. Then one evening, his buddy Jerry shows up with a six-pack. Six-pack, not a six-pack. Jerry proudly had the opposite of a six-pack. But Jerry doesn't mention the wife. He just says, "Thought you might want a beer." They sat on the porch, talked about the Cubs, Jerry's hemorrhoids, the important stuff. He said, "That's when I felt normal again, when Jerry treated me like I wasn't made of glass." Sometimes healing isn't about the big moments. It's about someone showing up with cheap beer and deciding to have a laugh for a change. Then there was a woman who lost her dog, her best friend of 14 years. One friend had mistakenly said to her, "Well, at least it's just a pet," which if you've ever loved a dog, you know is fighting words. She couldn't walk through the grocery store without having a breakdown each time she passed the pet food aisle. But then one day she turns the corner, braces for tears, and nothing. And she started laughing to herself because she was holding her breath for a breakdown that didn't come. Probably looked a little insane to the other customers. She said, "I knew I'd be okay when I could finally buy toilet paper without having an emotional cleanup in aisle 7. Sometimes healing is just functional grocery shopping. Back in 2009, when I was performing improv here at Second City, Chicago, my conservatory group had just finished a show. And this young couple came up to us after just sobbing with joy. And we were like, "Oh my God, we weren't that funny." If you've ever seen mediocre improv, you know. But then this couple shared with us that they had recently lost their newborn. And this was the first time they'd left the house. And that they hadn't laughed like that in months. And they needed this more than we could ever imagine, that they would remember this night forever. And we were like, "We are so sorry that this is the show you're going to remember forever. Please come back on Saturday. You deserve better." That was the night I realized the impact of laughter. In all their healing journeys, all these people needed to laugh eventually to create something new. We all know that equation, tragedy plus time equals comedy. I've got a better one. I think it actually goes something like tragedy plus time plus connection plus comedy equals healing eventually. It's just not that catchy, doesn't fit on a t-shirt. It feels like too much math. Humor is not a nice to have. It's a human need. When we share our pain with humor, we create a space for connection. And then we can say to ourselves, "Thank God I'm not the only one losing it in this Target right now." What's amazing is that humor doesn't just help us heal individually, it builds community. Ever been to a comedy club? Instant bonding with strangers. You're all laughing at that same story for different reasons, thinking that's totally me, or thank God that's not me. Early in my career, I was performing at Zanies here in Chicago, and the manager pulled us newbies aside and said, "Never belittle the room, even if the room be little." Cutest advice I ever got. He went on to say, whether there are 9 or 900 people, they showed up. They matter. Treat them like 900 every time. And trust me, I performed for audiences of less than 9, not to brag. Sometimes those people do laugh the hardest because they're the ones who really needed it that day. Here's what that taught me. Laughter creates trust between strangers. In a room full of people you've never met, humor becomes that universal language of, yeah, life is hard and ridiculous, and we're all just trying to figure this out together. I was reminded of the power of collective laughter very recently. Just weeks before I was offered this TEDx opportunity, I lost one of my best friends. 17 years of friendship. He was like the big brother I never had. He always said I would host SNL or do a TED Talk one day, and he would be front row cheering me on. He would have never made it to the show. He was always running so late for everything, which is why I expected him to live much longer. After he passed, I couldn't get on stage for weeks. Nothing felt funny. I didn't know when I would feel normal again. But then came his celebration of life. Hundreds of people showed up, friends, public figures, people flew in from all over. And you know what happened? We started sharing stories about him. And despite our grief, we started laughing. We laughed about his weird habits, like making eggs in the microwave in a coffee cup because he was too impatient for a pan. Or how I have this permanent tattoo on my toe that says toe in Times New Roman because I lost a bet with him at a Bears game. True story. We laughed about his need to always sit where he could see a door or an exit sign like some old school Chicago mob boss. And in that laughter, something beautiful happened. We started connecting, exchanging numbers, making plans. He left this gaping hole in all of our lives, and we began filling it for each other. And many of the friends I made through that experience are in this room right now. So, circling back to that canceled wedding day and all the hard things we've covered, those moments don't have to be the end of our stories. They get to be the beginning of everything else. When we choose to laugh instead of hide, when we choose to connect instead of isolate, we aren't just healing ourselves. We're showing everyone around us that joy is possible and necessary, even when it feels like your world is crumbling. So, next time life decides to sucker punch you, and it will a lot, you have a choice. Go it alone, or find your people, find a way to laugh through it together. You're standing in the perfect spot to build something new. Thank you.